Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I've been out not posting for a few days. I've been suffering from a migraine for 3 days. So if any of you have any tips or tricks on how to deal with a migraine or get rid of a migraine or things that have worked for you, please drop them down in the comments below because it was rough. And I'm just looking for anything in case I go through it again as to what can help or what's worked for others. That would be great. So for today's video, I thought I would talk about kind of the first 10 years of my life in the surgery process, and then get to the point of where the first surgery that I actually remember, and what that entailed, and then kind of get you up through till high school, and that should cover the majority of them, since after high school I've only had 2 or 3 maybe cosmetic surgeries. So starting out, as I had said before, and I'm going to be dropping some pictures along as we go so you can kind of see, as I'm talking about specific ages and specific things, you'll see kind of what I went through or what it looked like. I don't have any pictures of the surgeries or after the surgeries being in the hospital. It's just more snapshots of my childhood that I'm going to show you. So nothing graphic, nothing horrible. It'll just be kind of a look to show you where I was at each stage in my early childhood. So the first surgery, I was born, once again, July 30th, 1981. I had my first surgery by December 30th of the same year. And that was, as I mentioned in my earlier video, to make the incision ear to ear, and go in and relieve the pressure by moving the sutures in the skull to allow for my brain to grow. And this was after the weeks-long testing I had and trying to figure out the doctors that were available and what it actually was that I had, and all the testing and all the different hospital stays. That finally got me down to NYU, and we were able to have the first surgery when I was roughly 9 months old. And I'm gonna again drop some pictures in just so you can kind of see. From there, as I was going through the photos to get ready for the video, I realized I was just about to turn 2 when I had my second surgery. And it looks kind of like the same thing happened. There was the incision once again ear to ear, and I can only tell this because from here to about here my head was shaved, so they needed a clear path to get into that incision again. So I know that that's what happened. And you also see that underneath my eyes there was some bruising and swelling. So my best guess is that they went in ear to ear again, maybe to make more room, and then also to do the beginning stages of working on the eyes, maybe muscle surgery or anything in that nature while I was that young. I don't have like a log of everything I had done. I just have short stories or short memories from what I was told happened during that time. So I'm just giving you my overall best guess as to what I know from my experience having this condition. I do know one cute story. I guess cute is the way I can look at it now. Just before that surgery, when I turned 2, I was getting ready to go into the operating room, and I was freaking out. I was screaming. And so when you're that young, you're kind of in a crib, is what they put you in to go back into the OR for your safety. And I was, from what my parents told me, I was up on all fours, screaming my head off because I did not want to go back. And the doctors had to give me 2 shots, 2 hypos they called it, to calm me down and get me to relax enough to be able to go back and have the procedure done. So I think even back then I kind of knew what was going on, and I was pretty stubborn, and that may just have started the beginning of my willpower to go through all these surgeries and endure all the pain and everything that I did, because I was strong from the beginning. That's the way I like to look at it. After that, I don't really have anything between the ages of like 2 to 9. I can remember small bits of like going in to have like eye surgery done. I had to have tubes put in because at that point I couldn't cry. No tears would produce. So they had to put tubes in to allow myself to cry, or when I cried to produce tears. Different things. The first surgery that I can remember was at 9 years old, 3rd grade down at NYU, and they were doing reconstructive surgery by taking a portion of my hip and putting that in my nose to reconstruct that. I just remember being there. Of course, your eyes are swollen shut. You can't see anything for the first 2 or 3 days after you have surgery. So all of your other senses are heightened. So I can just remember hearing the doctors coming in and out and doing, the daily exams and follow up. And I can remember 3 days in, probably, they got me up and walking around. And I can remember the pain of that first step after having bone grafts taken out of your hip. And just the pain, enormous pain I felt getting up for that first step, that first walk after having that procedure done. At 9 years old, it was probably at that time the worst pain I'd ever been through, or what I can remember going through. And I can remember getting a huge stuffed dog. This thing was like 4 foot tall. It was huge. And I can remember somebody, nurse or somebody that worked there, bringing it into me, and I kept that for a good 10 years, I would say. That was adorable, and I always had it as kind of like my first memory of going through the surgery in New York City. And after that, it was like I can vividly remember, because we had to make yearly runs for checkups down to NYU, so it would be drive down at leave at 3 o'clock in the morning to get there by 9, and then go through photographs being taken, and then the yearly exam that I went through. Because of the condition, it affects not only your face, your skull, it affects every part of your body. It's your eyes, it's your speech, it's your hearing sometimes, it's your hands, it's your feet, it's every part of your body needs to kind of be examined or looked over and made sure that everything is moving along correctly and you're developing correctly. So I can remember you walk into a room and it's full. It's 30 chairs full of doctors, and in the front row you have your plastic surgeon right across from you, and then his team of doctors. So you might have a neurosurgeon, and you might have a speech doctor, and you might have an eye doctor, an eye surgeon. All of those core group of people are all along the front row. And then everybody that's studying underneath those doctors are all behind them, observing you and observing what the doctors are saying to you. Terrifying experience, frightening. I just remember never wanting to go into that room. It was just so big, so many people, and they're all staring at you at one time. So that happens yearly. You go in. They tell you, you get photos done. They take x-rays and they take still portraits to document your growth, to document what's going on. And they have all that behind you up on the wall to show the current development. And then after that, they kind of discuss with you when your next surgery will be, what they need to work on, how long everything will take, what needs to happen before you can have the procedure, and just generally any doctor talk that they need to do during that time, because that's the only time in 1 year that you're down there. And it generally lasts through the whole process, getting there, signing in, getting your pictures taken, seeing the group of doctors, maybe an hour to an hour and a half total. and then you were done. You were good for another year, or you were good until your surgery had been coordinated and everything was getting set up. It just depended. But that 1 year visit was always the core visit that let us know when the next surgery was. And from the ages of probably 2 to 9 years old, it was probably every year or every other year at max. I don't think I went more than a year during that time, during the first 10 years, without a surgery every year. Some of them are small, relatively. They go in and they have to put, like I explained before, the tear ducts in. That's what they're called. The tear ducts, in order for me to produce tears. That to me is a relatively small procedure versus when they go in from ear to ear and they're doing bone grafts and you're in the hospital for 5 to 7 days and that kind of stuff. So I say easy. It's not easy, but to me, in my eyes, it was a small procedure. So that was a surgery at 10 years old, and I can remember just being home recuperating. And a lot of times, you were just on pain meds and you were just laying down and resting because you couldn't see to walk around or play when you're 9 years old. You couldn't do much of anything. And I can remember, the standard setup of pain medication, antibiotics, drops in your eyes when you were able to open them enough. And that you would also have cream when your eyes were swollen shut. You would also have to have cream set on your eyes to keep your eyes moist. So even though you couldn't have drops in your eyes, you were still getting goop put on your eyes every 3 or 4 hours. After that, I had a couple-year break. I did. I got my braces on. There were other steps I needed to develop a little bit more for them to go through the next procedure. And that happened when I was going into my senior year of high school. They had set it up to where I was having bone grafts, I was having implants put into my cheeks, I was having another bone graft put into my nose, eye muscle surgery at the same time, and I think that was it. I don't want to say that's it, because it was a huge thing. Once again, I was going in for multiple things to be done, and I knew going in what the healing process was, and that was my whole summer of my senior year of high school, right before my senior year. That was my whole summer. I took up the recovery part of it, took that up. So I can remember going in, and it was the same process again, and it's the same pain, and as you remember, and it all comes back really quick when you wake up and realize what has just happened. The eyes are swollen shut. I can remember getting up, and after the first day, they let me get up and you start walking around the halls, or you just walk from your bed to the door and back just to get you a little bit mobile every day. And I can remember going in the bathroom and looking in the mirror, and I was so swollen and so black and blue and so distorted. Everything was so distorted. I stood there and cried. I just stood there and cried because it's terrifying at 16 years old to wake up and walk to a mirror and you're unrecognizable. I was unrecognizable at that point. The swelling was so severe, the black and blue, just everything. It wasn't me. It wasn't me looking in that mirror. That was the first memory I have of actually being terrified. Of course, when I was younger, I never thought about, let's go look in the mirror and see how awful this looks, or let's see if I can see anything. It never happened. And then once I hit the age where I was more aware of what was going on, that memory sticks out very, very big in my mind. After that surgery, one more thing I'll talk about, just that kind of sticks out, a huge memory for me. I had to go. So I had the reconstruction of the nose, and during that process, they put wires in to kind of hold everything in place. And one of the wires had popped through the skin and was just right under where the nose piece is. It was just right under this part right here. And it was just sticking out the slightest. But I would catch it on things. I would move my hand across and it would hurt. Or I would put my glasses on and it would rest on that and it would hurt. So I had to go back down to New York City And I can remember walking in, so my doctor had a inpatient office up on like the 6th floor. And so we went up there. I didn't have to go to clinic. I didn't have to sit down with all the craniofacial doctors or anything. It was just a meeting up in his office upstairs at NYU. And it was, my dad and I had taken the day, drove down to have that wire looked at. So he called me back to his office, and I walked in, and it had like kind of when you walk into a dentist office, the chair right there in the middle, and then all the tools around it and everything else, just an exam room. And I was by myself. I was 16. I was by myself. My dad was waiting out in the waiting room because we weren't thinking that anything was going to be done. It was just for him to go in and check the wire that was sticking out. So they started by giving me 2 shots in my nose of Novocaine. Still not explaining to me kind of what he was going to do. He just came in and I was given the Novocaine in my nose. And then probably within less than a minute, because I felt like it didn't even have time for the Novocaine to set in, he had grabbed a tool and he was standing over me and he ripped that wire out of my nose with no Novocaine really setting in, nothing there, and I screamed. And I'm pretty sure my dad heard me out in the waiting room. So after he was done pulling the wire and cutting it off, I think he just put like a small bandage over it and was like, "You're good to go." So we walked out, and I can remember my doctor walking out with me saying, "I believe I've hurt her, but like the wire issue is all taken care of." So at that point, what are you going to do? If the wire's gone, that was what we went down there to see how to get it taken care of. And he did. He was very efficient in getting it taken care of. But I will always remember that feeling of laying in that chair and then having him walk up and I could just see him on the side and then not even telling me what he was doing and then ripping that wire out. So I hope these videos are helpful. I hope that you have a little bit more understanding, or if you've gone through what I've gone through, you're able to be like, yes, this makes sense, or this is what happened to me too, or we can kind of just connect in that way. I have received a few messages that are just amazing from people that have gone through the same thing, and that's part of the reason I'm doing these videos, is I would love to connect to other people that have gone through the same thing, and I want to share my story to people that just don't know much about it. And I will see you in my next video. Take care, guys.